Hi, I'm Rayy Munir,
And I'm Sant.
and we're doing our AP Literature digital essay analysis on Sleeping in the Forest by Mary Oliver. Let's get started. Mary Oliver, at the ripe young age of 82, is a transcendentalist, and most of her poems revolved around nature. She is well known for vividly describing the natural world and its beauty. At times, she has been compared to Emily Dickinson because of their mutual attraction towards the concepts of nature, solitude, and inner thought. Oliver's verses also focuses on the quiet occurrences of nature. Her work was also inspired by the hippie era that took place in the 1960s. She became popular during this time period because her writings captured the soul essence of this era, which was mainly about inner reflection, peace, serenity, and nature. This reflects perfectly with the theme of sleeping in the forest. The main theme of Sleeping in the Forest is the sublime. Mary Oliver tries to show that nature has a healing and reviving effect on people, and she has a strong connection with this effect. People seek solitude in nature, and the sublime revolves around the belief that the key to all emotional and mental healing could be found in nature. Mary Oliver, a strong transcendentalist and a firm believer in the sublime, wants to convey and reinforce this idea in her audiences so that they can also partake in the restoration that nature gives.
The earth remembered me,
She took me back so tenderly, arranging her skirts.
her pockets full of lichens and seeds,
I slept as never before.
a stone on the riverbed.
Nothing between me and the white fire of the stars.
But my thoughts, and they floated light as moths among the branches of the perfect trees.
All night I heard the small kingdoms breathing around me, the insects and the birds who do their work in the darkness.
All night I rose and fell, as if water, grappling with luminous doom.
By morning I had vanished at least a dozen times, into something better. The poem starts out with the narrator in a desperate position, lying in the forest as she slowly starts to become one with the forest as nature takes her back. She describes nature as revitalizing and healing her mind and soul. She is in blissful peace while sleeping in the forest. Nature and the rising and falling of water in the poem shows the cycle of rebirth, until the narrator eventually emerges reborn as something better.
The aspect of the divine powers of nature has been depicted throughout the use of various different literary devices. However, what poetic devices does the author use to convey the theme of the poem, which is the importance of nature and the connection between nature and man? As we will discuss, the author incorporates a brilliant use of personifications, symbolism, enjambment, and similes to depict the brilliance of nature. It is important to note that during the poem, there is an attitude shift between lines 13 and 14. Before the shift, the author uses very positive tones, and the attitude is a grateful adoration of nature for its healing and soothing effects on the reader. However, after the shift, on line 14, the attitude turns to a sentimental nostalgia, where the speaker laments leaving the forest and her unconsciousness to come back to the lesser version of reality that is day-to-day life.
Personification is one of the major literary devices that the poet incorporates in order to emphasize the wonders of nature. In the poem, Oliver personifies the earth by describing the earth as arranging her dark skirts and her pockets full of lichens and seeds, as shown on lines 3 to 5. This is meant to illustrate visions of how nature is adjoined with humans. The author depicts the earth as a living, dynamic being with human characteristics instead of being flat and lifeless. The narrator describes the earth doing physical and mental actions such as remembering and taking her back.
The personification of earth when she took me back so tenderly, in lines 2 and 3, creates a tone of peacefulness and calmness of nature. When Oliver writes, small kingdoms breathing around me, in lines 12 to 13, she uses the word kingdom to place herself in the same category as animals and nature. The comparison of human and nature suggests the relationship between humans and nature. Oliver wrote Sleeping in the Forest to be more with nature, and personifying earth gives the impression that the earth is one with her, and they have a special bond. The poet also uses enjambment throughout the poem, reinforcing how nature is not controllable, yet rather it is the one in control. Life is seen as a circle, a shape without beginning nor end, and this poem reflects that very well by flowing from line to line without stopping, as nature cannot be described so quickly in a single line. Enjambment also exercises the poet's stream of consciousness, unhindered and continuous as the flow of her poem.
Another great example of a literary device used to convey the theme of the poem is a simile. which is shown on lines 9 and 10. And they floated, light as moths, among the branches of the perfect trees. The author is comparing her thoughts to moths flying above the tree. This quote symbolizes the narrator finally truly being one with nature as she peacefully sleeps and dreams. Her mind is allowed to explore the wonders of nature. The reader is also able to visualize the freedom of the narrator's thoughts and how clearly she can think now. Her thoughts are as free as moths in the night sky, allowing them to go wherever they want and whenever they want. Last but not least, symbolism is a literary device that the poet applies very frequently throughout the poem in order to reveal deeper aspects of the poem related to the sublime. One major symbol that was used was found in line 16. As if water, grappling with a luminous doom. The luminous doom mentioned in this quote symbolizes the narrator's fear of waking up from her peaceful sleep. During her sleep, her mind and soul were truly connected with nature. She fears being separated with nature once she awakens. She will have to go back to her own reality once again, which is not nearly as blissful as being one with nature. Also, the narrator vaguely implies that she emerges as something better after her sleep in the forest. This is mentioned at the end of the poem. Something better means that the narrator is now in a much better state of being when compared to how she was before she fell into her sleep in the forest. Before, she was weighed down by society's pressures and anxieties. The forest revitalizes her and ultimately spiritually elevates her. She says that she vanishes while being outside, which means that she often loses herself in the wonders of nature. Some other major symbols used in the poem are lichens and seeds, as mentioned in line 5. Lichens are a fungus that develop a symbiotic relationship with their hosts. Allowing lichens to grow undisturbed may help add diversity, texture, and color to areas where it can be difficult to grow. Essentially, they add beauty and essence to areas that are initially dark and shady. Seeds are the source of life for many plants, and nature nurtures them into something beautiful. Seeds can lie dormant for many years until they germinate in the right environment for them, turning them into mature plants, which could essentially be considered as something better. In the poem, nature has these tools for growth and development, as seen through them being in Earth's pockets, readily accessible to anybody who needs them. This suggests that similar to how nature nurtures plants and other wildlife into blossoming life forms, nature also has the ability to help men develop into a better state of being, especially if they are in need of it.
Our last aspect of the sublime in symbolism is the white fire of the stars, mentioned near the middle of the poem. This is our last facet of nature. White is typically a color used to symbolize purity and also innocence, not unlike the state the poet wants to revert back to. This is why she's sleeping in the woods in the first place, to get back to her innocence and purity. Fire is also used as a refiner, and in forests, it's especially a starter for new life. Some trees are actually supposed to catch on fire so that they can release their seeds and bring new life to the forest. They also help get rid of unwanted weeds and invasive species that could potentially harm the forest.
In conclusion, Mary Oliver implements literary devices such as personification, enjambment, similes, and symbols in order to effectively depict aspects of the sublime and nature's connection to man in her poem. She emphasizes nature's bond with man by giving nature human qualities. Many lines in the poem are enjambed to represent Mary's stream of consciousness, which also represents the continuous flowing behavior of nature. Also, her comparison of her thoughts to that of floating moths brilliantly depicts the freedom that nature provides her mind and soul. The use of symbols such as lichens and seeds played a big part in many of Oliver's efforts to display how nature helps man become better. Overall, Mary Oliver successfully conveys her message to the world about nature's magnificence, power, and that it must be celebrated and appreciated.